And she will say, well, what's your name? And then she'll bring you a packet of information on that work so that you can then connect yourself with those researchers that have done that kind of work. So tomorrow will be a day. You won't remember what I'm saying now anyway. Okay.
I will.
What did Skip say? Let me see.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, we want to talk this afternoon about Hemi-Sync. Now, Hemi-Sync is an interesting application of sound. You probably have heard people say or read about a sound in one ear and a slightly different sound in the other ear, and it's the way the brain reacts to these different sounds, and that's Hemi-Sync. Actually, it's a little more complex than that. We'll get involved in the sound thing in just a minute. But something that we call the Hemi-Sync process, or over the years, what has been developed as an effective way to use this to gain personal experience. What is an effective method for allowing people this finding out for themselves? Remember Bob Monroe said the only way to know is to find out for yourself. You know, it's like you can read books about it, you can talk to interesting people, you can watch TV, documentaries, but you're never really going to know until you find out for yourself. So that's the legacy that Bob Monroe left behind, is a way for you to find out for yourself. And we call that the Hemi-Sync process. Since I talked about the legacy of Bob Monroe, I think it probably might be okay to say that the Monroe Institute itself was formed as a nonprofit organization in 1985. 10 years later, in 1995, Bob had his last out-of-body experience. He passed. And today happens to be the anniversary. Bob passed on St. Patrick's Day in 1995. So I thought it would be worth an honorable mention, since we're talking about the legacy that he's left behind. This idea of talking about the process, this Hemi-Sync process, what is the educational process whereby one can have this personal experience so that one can find out for themselves. Now, it's not so easy to talk about it like you might talk about a medication. You take your vitamin pill in the evening, for example, and you say, but what's the active ingredient? You know, it has 80% fillers and this kind of color dye and coated with this and a little sugar mixed in or whatever. Inside 2% of it is the active ingredient of the actual thing that's supposed to do you molecular good. And it might be interesting to talk about, well, what's the active ingredient in Hemi-Sync? Is it the theta sound pattern or what is it? But you can't really break it down that way. It's not the same thing. It's much easier to talk about this as being not so much an active ingredient formula, but a recipe. I mean, if you imagine I ask you, well, what is the active ingredient in this marvelous chocolate cake? I just had this wonderful piece of chocolate cake. What's the active ingredient? Well, you know, is it the eggs? Is it the flour? Is it the sugar? Is it the shortening? What is it? What's the active ingredient? Well, my wife would say it's the chocolate, obviously. That's the active ingredient in a chocolate cake. But you get my point. It's not so much just one thing. It's the way in which a variety of things come together to create this thing called the chocolate cake. So let's talk about Hemi-Sync in that way. What is the recipe? What are the individual ingredients in the Hemi-Sync process? And it all starts off with physical relaxation, the idea of physical relaxation. Now that in itself is not so strange. You think, well, yeah, a lot of meditative techniques, they have to do with getting physically relaxed. But I want to discuss this in two kind of different venues. First, the physiology or the measurable things connected with relaxation. And the other side of that is your awareness or consciousness. Are you aware? Do you know when you're relaxed or not? And that's a little bit different. If we go first over to the physiology of relaxation, those are all objective measurements. If I say to you, okay, so here I am, I'm going to relax, I'm going to let go of my muscles and I'm going to relax. Well, what things could you measure? You could measure muscle tension, and when you measure the muscle tension going down, then you could measure the blood pressure going down. And as the blood pressure goes down, then you notice the heart rate also goes down. Then as the heart rate slows down, your respiration slows down. As the heart rate slows down, respiration slows down, cortisol levels change in your bloodstream. You have now sort of found a way but past hypertension. I gotta get this work done, kind of hypertension. You've conquered that. With measurable means, we can hook wires up to you and measure those things and take your blood and measure the changes in blood. Go on up to the head and you can see changes in brain waves. Your brain waves slow down from the cacophony of beta down into alpha and maybe even down into theta. And the slower the rhythm, the more synchronous your hemispheres become as you get into this relaxed state. Now, even though we can measure those things and make some sort of an objective definition, do this, do this, do this, do this, that is a measurement of relaxation. You can even measure your extremities. When your fingers and your ears and toes and so forth warm up, it means that the capillaries have expanded and you're passing more blood through your extremities, so you are warming up, and that's a measurement of relaxation. Even in biofeedback, they teach you how to warm up your hands. It's a matter of reducing blood pressure so your migraine headache goes away. But you think you're just warming your hands all that time, but it's actually changing a great amount of physiology. So those things are measurable. But if we go over here to the other realm, do you know when you're relaxed? You don't have all those meters to say, oh, look, yeah, I'm relaxed now. Yeah, all those meters are right, I'm relaxed. Well, when we're sitting here right now, it's sort of questionable. Are you relaxed or aren't you? You really don't know. I might come home from the office one day and be all tensed up and saying, I'm a high-powered salesman and we just closed the Phillips account and my goodness, I'm so relaxed. I know I've been tense for a couple of weeks. I'm so relaxed now. I just can't stand it. If I was to have a beer now, I'd sit down and go to sleep. And I don't know. I'm really not aware of the tension and what I'm doing to my, I'm not conscious of that. Well, this kind of an awareness thing is something that people have been dealing with for a long, long time in trying to lower the hypertension and the cardiovascular disease that we have, and in psychological intervention to try to get by anxiety disorders. Like, I'm really afraid to go up the dark stairs. I can't stand going into the parking lot at work. It's just terrible. Oh no, I'm so afraid. That kind of tension and anxiety disorder. And so over the years we've learned to train people to take charge of and become aware of their own physical relaxation. One of the techniques that was developed many years ago was by a guy named Jacobson. It was back in the 1800s, and he invented something called the Jacobson Progressive Relaxation Technique. Now that might sound like something like this. There's lots of adaptations, but it might sound something like this. With your hand, take your fingers and push the nails of your fingers down into the palm of your hand. Wrap your hand tight, wrap your thumb around the fingers, squeezing tightly, feeling the tension, feeling the nails pressing into the palm, feeling tight and intense. Now slowly extend every finger one at a time. Unwrap your thumb and extend. Relax. Feel the warmth flow into your hand. Enjoy this feeling of relaxation. Now once again, tight, gripping, tight, pressing, tense. And slowly release and extend. Feel the warmth and enjoy this feeling of relaxation. Now, with my voice and with my choice of words and with a little biofeedback thing called my hand, those things really do happen. So I